who passed away from brain cancer after he just turned 5, almost 9 years ago. Having lost a child is a pain that never goes away, with constant triggers all around. We started the foundation after watching Ty and so many other children suffer through years of harsh treatments. Ty Louis Campbell Foundation has created a model of funding that allows us to directly invest in research projects and procure future protocols that will not only help fight pediatric cancer, but do so with less toxicity and trauma to our children's small bodies. Tonight is one of many events where, rather than mourning our son, we choose to celebrate his life and legacy while sharing drinks and laughter with old friends and welcome new ones. Thank you for participating, and cheers to Ty.
Cheers to Ty. He's drinking coffee.
We have a lot of new guests tonight that are not necessarily familiar with Ty's Foundation. So I also am going to share a short video. Bear with me if you've seen this already. I really appreciate it. But I think it gives probably one of the stronger representations of what we are all about here at Ty's Foundation.
Oh, he was the cutest little guy, lots of love, always wanted to hug and kiss you, tell you he loves you. I love you. He loved to read stories. He was our sunshine.
Cancer takes the lives of more children in this country than any other disease, more than AIDS, asthma, diabetes, and cystic fibrosis combined. Childhood cancer steals the futures of our sons, daughters, siblings, and friends.
Ty had a very rare tumor, which made things very, very difficult from the get-go. From the very time that his tumor was diagnosed, the prognosis was pretty poor, and so we knew from the very beginning that we were up against a serious challenge. The difficult part about treating a child with a brain tumor when they're that young is that some of the modalities that we typically use in older kids or adults can be extremely toxic to the developing brain and spinal cord. And in retrospect, a lot of what we did to Ty to try and eradicate the tumor ended up hurting him as much as it did helping him with respect to tumor treatment.
Ty Campbell lost his life to brain cancer in 2012. Lou and Cindy Campbell created the Ty Louis Campbell Foundation in his memory to fund cutting-edge research that will lead to the discovery of new and innovative ways to attack and destroy cancer. Since 2012, your support has enabled them to fund research projects and clinical trials at a variety of the top research centers, many of which focus on immunotherapy and precision medicine to bring safer, more effective treatment options to children.
To survive. And our goal at the foundation is to make sure that there are less toxic, innovative treatments, that are better and geared towards children.
Precision medicine, genomics, combination therapies, and immunotherapies. These cutting-edge approaches to cancer have demonstrated real results. And the Ty Louis Campbell Foundation has brought these options to children battling cancer today through various research projects. The Ty Louis Campbell Foundation funds the work of researchers and partners who push for new ideas. We recognize that there won't be one magic cure-all for children with cancer. Instead, we are focused on building a menu of treatment options that can meet the individual needs of children by advancing clinical trials.
It's not going to be tomorrow, and it's probably not going to be a year from now, 5 years from now, but if at the end of our lifetime, we meet a little boy that gets some new treatment options and has a future ahead of him that our child didn't have the chance for, then we would have achieved the world.
Thank you for helping to make these achievements a reality.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry, I didn't realize if I mute myself that I might be muting the video, so I hope that didn't take away from the story. Hold on.
Oh no, where'd you go?
I was just saying I'm kicking it over to you guys before I mess anything else up. Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, this is our third now.
Third one.
Yeah, and every time we finish, we're like, what's next? What can we do? And we just always have such a good time being together and presenting for all of you and doing it for such an amazing foundation. Cindy, I think the video was awesome to share because it kind of brings it back home and is a super emotional process and something to see. But what we're all doing here tonight is obviously making a difference, or at least attempting to make a little bit of a difference if we possibly can. So
yeah, thank you for letting us, be involved. We want to be able to help in any way that we can. So thank you for that. And thank you for everyone joining in tonight as well. Before we get started, those of you who have not unwrapped your cheese, can you please do so now? And has everyone unwrapped their cheeses? Please raise your hands. Was anybody shocked by how it smelled? I see a lot of people nodding. So I don't want anyone to be fearful of this cheese. This is a very delicious cheese. It just likes to air out a little bit before eating it. So it's not going to taste the way it smells, I can assure you of that. So don't worry, it's a really delicious cheese. But I'm gonna hand this over to Andrew now for the first wine, which we're gonna pair with the dried mandarin oranges.
Perfect. And really quickly beforehand, I'm sure a lot of you know us and we know a lot of you, but for those of you who don't, so my name is Andrew Sarubbi. I run McKinney and Doyle, and this is my co-host here, Cynthia Kinahan, who owns and runs Pawling Bread Co. So my background started in my early 20s in wine and spirits, where I studied out at the culinary in California, and became a sommelier. Found a really great passion in that and the history and culture behind it all. So this is what I love. I love being able to share it and talk about it with food and wine. So.
And my background is in design and art, and I kind of fell into bread making about 6-7 years ago. I taught myself how to make bread, and when I learned that this was a calling for me, I quit my job and went to Vermont for an apprenticeship, came back and pursued bread making full-time. And the people in Pawling have been very, very supportive to us. They put money together, they raised capital for us to open a brick and mortar shop. So we're very lucky to be here in the village of Pawling, and we would love to give back in any way that we can. So.
Awesome. So now we will jump into wine. So again, I'm sure a lot of you know these aspects of it, but I always like to kind of lead into any conversation like this with breaking down the basics of grape varietals, fermentation, aging, because all of that will be discussed with all the three wines. And it all has a major impact on really how it tastes and how it's consumed. So obviously there are multiple different kinds of varietals throughout the world, most of which are indigenous to what is considered old world winemaking regions, such as Spain and France, the European wine region. So different vineyard sites are obviously going to achieve different climatic influences. So different temperature variations from day to night make a big impact on how the grapes are grown. So ultimately, the growing process, you're trying to achieve this ultimate balance of acid and sugar. And that the winemakers really come into play there to mitigate those factors. If you're in a cooler climate, there's a lot of things that are going to influence those varietals and help them become riper and help increase the acidity levels that are in the grapes themselves. So obviously they have skin and they have seeds. The skin and seeds of the grapes are where a lot of the aromatic congeners come from. So that's what creates the aroma and the flavor profile that you're experiencing. They also contain the tannin, so that astringent kind of flavor profile that can also create structure in a wine.
Is that drying sensation?
Exactly. And then the pigment. So, you know, of course, the skin is going to impact the pigment. So after the grapes are selected and picked and pressed, there's a process called maceration, which is where the juice will sit with the skins and seeds for a period of time, per the winemaker's choice, and overall flavor profile that they're going for. And then after that, there is the process of fermentation. So it's the yeast consuming the sugar to convert that into alcohol.
Do they add yeast to that, or is that a natural occurring yeast from the skin?
It can, no, it's from the environment. So it can be indigenous yeast or natural yeast, but it can also be cultivated yeast. So if you want to create a very specific flavor profile, or you want to be very consistent with your wine year after year after year, you might choose to use cultivated yeast because that's going to give you a little more control. Nowadays, with a lot of winemakers and vineyard managers erring more towards the side of organic farming and sustainability, they like to represent their terroir and their climatic influences. So native indigenous yeast seems to be the way to go, which I think kind of lends to this little air of magic. And
yeah, it's like alchemy.
Yeah, exactly. And closely connected to bread making as well.
As also with salami making as well.
Oh, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that's that. And then after that, you have the process of aging. So whether you choose to age the wine or not age the wine, after fermentation takes place, will also make a major impact on the overall flavor profile of the wine. With aging, there is brand new oak. So there's new American or French oak that's classically used. Or there is like first passage, second passage, third passage, which are used barrels. So they've already been used to age a wine previously, or kind of this new trend is aging wine in ex-bourbon cask or something like that. So those are going to impart different flavor profiles as well. But for the most part, the more times the barrel is used, the less you're imparting oak flavor and tannin. So if you're in a third passage or fourth passage barrel, it's really more to allow the wine to soften and kind of concentrate the flavor profile.
Will it take on the previous product that was aging in the oak barrel?
Very minimally. When you're working with spirits and then aging a wine in a barrel that previously held spirits, obviously that's a much stronger profile. So it can extract some of that from the oak, because of course oak is porous. Mm-hmm. So it's going to soak some of that, those aromatic congeners up, and then put that back into the wine. But yeah, and so when we're talking about aromatic congeners, and we probably have talked about this before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're these little DNA molecules that link together to create a certain flavor profile. So everything like these mandarins, like this cheese, like grass, they all have aromatic congeners that are going to create an aroma. And the first time that I really was like, my eyes were open to this was with this study that was done on the grape varietal Gewürztraminer, which is an Austrian or German grape. And it was always said to smell and taste like lychee.
Oh.
And so when they did the chemical analysis of the varietal, they found the exact same aromatic congener, so the exact same DNA makeup to create that aroma in Gewürztraminer that they did find in the lychee fruit. Yeah, so it's cool because a lot of people are a little unsure about what to say when they taste a wine or when they smell a wine, and people who might not have a lot of experience with it are kind of nervous to say that, but it's so important to just kind of say what you smell and what you taste, because they are naturally present. Those same exact components are there. It gave me the confidence when I smell and taste something to be able to say it. And you know, even if someone else doesn't smell or taste it, everyone has their own kind of preference and pulls things out differently. So I just find that really interesting.
Wow, that's cool.
So leading into the first wine, if you haven't opened it already, I'm sure probably most of you have after a few of these we've seen. So we're doing a sparkling Chenin Blanc from the Loire region of France. So when I'm presenting a sparkling, I love to do regions that are different and a little bit more obscure and unique, because everyone knows champagne. And a lot of people have this kind of adverse feeling towards it. They don't really enjoy it, maybe because it's too bready or yeasty, which is from a specific process that the wine goes through. But there are so many other regions that have been making sparkling wine for hundreds of years. A lot of it is aligned with champagne. Some of it is a little bit different in how they go about doing it.
And not every sparkling wine can call itself champagne, because it has to be produced in the region of Champagne.
Right. So only if it's coming from the region of Champagne can it be called a champagne. And champagne itself has to be only using certain grape varietals. So Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier to create that wine. And so that's the thing with European wines as well, especially in France, which is another reason why I selected all French wine for this one. It's another aspect of wine that people seem to be a little uncomfortable with, because like when I first started learning, you read a label and you have absolutely no idea what it is. So it could be from one end of the spectrum completely, you know, all the way to the other end. So it's really just very simple little things. And once you learn about it, then you have this better sense of confidence to kind of open your mind and taste something different, purchase something different that you might not have before. So you understand a little bit more. So the wine that we're choosing to pour first, like I said, it's 100% Chenin Blanc coming from the Loire region of France. So Cynthia, actually, we're going to jump over to that map. So I'm going to show you all. Perfect. So if you see, there are 3 regions there that I've circled. So the top left, which is the green, that whole region there in the northern part of France is Loire. So the Loire Valley is an area that, other than Sancerre, really doesn't get a lot of recognition. They make fantastic wines. There's 69 different AOCs, so 69 different tiny little villages that are recognized by the government to produce a specific wine with a very specific varietal that they're allowed to use and label it with their village name. So then you'll see throughout the rest of the tasting, we're going to go down all the way to the south of France in Provence, and then we're going to jump back up into the center there, more towards the east in Beaujolais. So if we'll go to the next screen. Perfect. So this is that section of Loire that we've expanded there for you to see. And you'll see that black circle there, that's the region of Montlouis. So to the right of that is the region of Sancerre. So Sancerre would be the name on the label of the wine. And a Sancerre is going to be a Sauvignon Blanc. But it's a different Sauvignon Blanc than like a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc or a California Sauvignon Blanc. It's very specific. Sauvignon Blanc really takes on a lot of the attributes of its climate. So Sancerre is becoming more popular these days. It's very crisp and citrusy and has this like flinty minerality to it, which will carry into this sparkling as well. So as you go towards the west, so then you hit a region called Touraine. Sancerre, as it's becoming more popular, the prices are starting to increase. Touraine is a region that is phenomenal. It's like Sancerre's little sister, which also produces Sauvignon Blanc for half the price, if not more. And any reds coming from that region are going to be a Pinot Noir. So now moving further into our circle there is the region of Mont Louis. So that is between the Cher and Loire River directly. It's this little tiny region, and the winemaker who owns the vineyard site for this wine, his name is Jackie Black. He purchased the property in 1989, and he really wanted to just represent that region and represent the varietal of Chenin Blanc to the best that he could. So this sparkling that we're doing, it's 100% Chenin Blanc, and it's coming from 40-year-old vines. So older vines make a big difference in the structure of the wine because soil plays such a massive impact on the wine. So the further down the vines go into the soil, the more they're soaking up that nutrients and really taking on a lot of the other aspects of the terroir. And you always have a subsoil, and you have different layers of soil. So this region has this chalky clay-like soil, and then below that is this layer of limestone. So it's going to really take up a lot more of that limestone. And because of that soil content, it helps to maintain the water really so that it can keep the irrigation correct for the vineyard site. So when you're talking about a sparkling wine, there's a few different methods of creating that second fermentation, which is where the bubbles come from. So with champagne, which is called méthode traditionnelle or méthode champenoise, it is the secondary fermentation happens in bottles. So the first fermentation happens to create a still wine. So you would pick those grapes, you press them, you ferment them. So the yeast eats the sugar, turns it to alcohol, you end up with this still wine. Then what happens is the wine gets bottled. So the wine gets bottled, and then there's a dosage added. So it's a small amount of sugar that's added back into the still wine, and then it's capped. So it's going to have some of those yeast, the yeast in there naturally present. That's going to start to eat those sugars and try to put off that CO2 that's created. But it can't go anywhere because it's trapped.
Silly me, I thought it was carbonated.
So then you end up with this sparkling wine. So with champagne, a lot of times you get that bready, yeasty quality. Is it gone? As you consumed it.
I have a secret wine drinker here next to me. That's Bill, by the way, my husband.
For a little more, of course. So with Prosecco, which is a sparkling coming from Italy, they do the secondary fermentation in tank. So immediately after the secondary fermentation happens, they're able to rack the sparkling off the lees, or the dead yeast cells, they're called lees. So it doesn't impart as much of that creamy flavor profile. So with this sparkling Chenin, it goes through the same process of champagne. But because Chenin Blanc is known for its super high acidity level, it really helps to contrast to that creaminess that comes through. So you're not going to get as much of that brioche kind of flavor. Also, too, because you have the Mont Louis between those two rivers, and you'll see all of these wine regions are mitigated by some sort of river. It's very important for winemaking regions to have that running through. Not only do they help reflect sunlight in colder regions to warm up the vineyard sites, but they also help to cool the vineyard sites in a really hot region. So they play a major part in the whole process. But because you're getting that warmth that's coming off of the rivers and really helping to keep those grapes nice and ripe, you get this really full, ripe flavor profile. So it comes through with this like ripe tropical fruit almost. Yeah. You get this little hint of like green mango kind of minerality that comes through.
I can feel it in the back of my jaw too.
The acidity, yeah, which is super racy and really crisp and gets your mouth going, which is why I chose to go with the mandarin, because the mandarin, even as it's dried, that's going to concentrate the sugars more in the fruit, right? and then you get that textural component, which will really play nicely with the bubbles.
Actually makes the mandarin very sweet.
Oh yeah, That helps to bring that up.
Yeah,
brighten
it's
it a little bit.
delicious. When I took my first sip, I tasted the minerals, like the flinty minerality that you said. But on the second and third tasting, it kind of mellowed out and it was sweeter in a way.
So there is also a process in winemaking called malolactic fermentation, which is referred to as mallow. A lot of times they'll say no mallow or X amount of mallow.
How do you spell that mallow?
M-A-L-O. So malolactic fermentation. And it's the process of converting malolactic acids to lactic acids.
Okay.
So a lactic acid, if you think like dairy, it's going to take these really sharp hits of that, like really almost unpalatable acid and convert it to something that's creamier.
Right, daily acids.
So that happens, a lot of champagne goes through that process of malolactic fermentation. Most reds go through the process of malolactic fermentation to kind of calm them and soften them. Even though Chenin Blanc is so racy and acidic, Jackie Blott, who is the winemaker, really wanted to retain that characteristic. So he did not put this wine through any malolactic fermentation. So it retained that acidity level and didn't take on that creaminess. So you have that little bit of cream coming from the secondary fermentation in bottle, but otherwise it's a really different, interesting take on a sparkling wine that went through the same process as champagne.
It's very youthful tasting.
Yeah, fresh.
Very fresh.
Absolutely. So, and now that Prosecco has made such a major impact on the market with sparkling, it kind of opened the doors and led the way to
other sparkling French wine.
Yeah, and all over the world too. There's a lot of other regions that are known to make sparkling wines. So, yes, I have a question. The mandarins. So Cynthia went through and Cynthia selected the options for the food component. And then I slipped in and selected the wine. So what made you select the mandarin?
I selected the mandarin because they were just so pretty. And I loved it because some people would like to have an option of eating cheese without crackers that contain wheat to it. And so I thought the dried mandarin oranges were a nice substitute for crackers for people who are on a gluten-free diet. And I also love fruit, not necessarily fresh fruit because of the acid content. Sometimes it messes with my stomach. And so when I found this company that's based in California, they grow and dehydrate California-grown fruits with no artificial preservatives, no artificial coloring, actually zero coloring, zero sugar. It's just 100% pure fruit that they slice and dehydrate in a special way that retains its color and its natural sugars. And so with the pairing of the cheese and the salami too, I thought that the fruit would be a nice option to just cut the fat a little bit.
Yeah.
Like bring some balance to the palate, so to speak. So
I agree, and it definitely does look pretty on the
it is
board.
very pretty.
It's quite contrasting.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed the first wine. So that's that. We'll step to the second. Melissa had a little surprise. Is Melissa jumping in there?
I will jump in. Hi, guys. So I just wanted to kind of mix it up and play a little game for some fun. So we're going to ask everyone that's participating tonight to turn their video on if they haven't already. And I'm just going to change my view so I can see all of you. And we're going to ask that the very first person that can come back to us and show us a deck of cards, get ready, is going to win a $50 gift card to McKinney and Doyle. Go. Oh, Sean Conley. Okay, so I'm going to
engaged.
that was right on it. we were trying to think of things that people wouldn't have at their table, and we were thinking, okay, they'll have a cheese.
I want to see the replay. I want to see the replay on that.
Very quick that was. Okay, so Sean Conley for the clear win. So congratulations, guys. I will touch base with you, if not tonight, tomorrow morning, to get your information, and we'll hook you up with a $50 gift card to McKinney and Doyle. So thank you for participating tonight. I appreciate it, and we appreciate it. And all right, so moving on. You ready? Take it back over, Cynthia and Andrew.
Back to our, what is it? Regularly scheduled program. All right, awesome. So we're jumping to the next, the second wine. So the Galinée from Sulotse. So really my favorite Provence producer. Love, love, love them. Their Provence Rosé is my favorite. I talk about it all the time, so I probably brought it up at the last few tastings. Yeah. So it's a husband and wife team who, she is Brazilian, born and raised in Brazil. He's from Marseille. They met on a hiking trip in Corsica. And they ended up purchasing this land that was really sponsored by the French government to try to bring young entrepreneurs into the region of Provence, introduce them to farmland and farming, viticulture, winemaking, and start to kind of get that excitement back into the youth. Because with a lot of these projects, and with wine and like the mezcals we were talking about earlier, it's usually fourth, fifth, sixth generation winemakers. They grew up doing this, but they, the French government found that was starting to dissipate, and a lot of people were not continuing that family tradition. So, so this amazing couple took over this property. So they're in a region called Couteaux, Aux, and Provence. So we'll show you that on the map. We'll go back there. Perfect. So then down. How do you go down?
That button.
Promise I'm not. Absolutely.
There we go.
One more time, sorry. Perfect. All right. So you'll see the part that's circled there. So all the other highlighted areas are regions of Provence. Provence is known to produce about 80%, or I'm sorry, 80% of what they produce is rosé. So the remaining parts of what they produce is their white and their reds. Obviously, the different regions there, but where I have circled is going to be where the vineyards are located for this delicious white blend. So being that you're right on the Mediterranean coast, it's a very specific climate. So one might think that it's really hot and tropical and glamorous. It's not. It's during the summer, they have short summers, but during the summer, it's really, really hot. Really, they get a lot of sunshine, but it's just a short window of time.
Really? I didn't know that.
So their winters are much longer and dry. So the limestone and chalk soil, which will really help to retain a lot of that water content, comes into play as a major factor here. You have to have a proper vineyard site in order to, you have to tend to the land correctly in order to really make sure that you can produce a proper, well-executed grape. So there's also something called the Mistral winds, which help in the summertime. So the Mistral winds is this wind pattern that comes through right to the light pink area and swoops all the way around and comes back down over the green area at nighttime. So
sounds like it sings.
Yeah. I'm sure it does. But so it really helps to cool off the vineyards at night. There's something in science with temperature called diurnal temperature. And so I refer to it a lot because a diurnal temperature shift is a great change in temperature, especially between day and night. A lot of times at higher altitudes, it'll make a major difference.
So it's sort of like a shock to the system?
Well, it's just the grape is working constantly. When it's hot, it needs to take in that sunlight. It needs to take in the water. So when you cool the vineyard off, it allows the grape to kind of rest a little bit. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And you need that, just like we need that as humans to keep ourselves going and stay healthy. So it's very important, and that's why that Mediterranean coast can create these beautiful, ripe, juicy, aromatic wines because of those mitigating factors is what they're called.
Yeah.
So
Because the grapes are getting 8 hours of sleep.
they're 8 hours of sleep. I'm sure you don't know anything about that. Your 3 a.m. start times. Yeah. So the blend is Grenache Blanc predominantly. It's 40% Grenache Blanc.
And that's the grape varietal, Grenache Blanc?
Correct. Yep. Garnacha. It's also known as Garnacha Bianco in Spain. It came from northern Spain originally. That's where it started. And then obviously traveled just from the Romans actually bringing it into this region. But so it's 40% Grenache Blanc. There's 20% Uni Blanc. Uni Blanc is a varietal that not many people know unless you drink cognac. It's the base of cognac because cognac has to be made from a specific set of grape varietals, just like with a lot of different types of wine. So then it also has Claret and Vermentino. So Vermentino in France is known as Roll. I've always known Vermentino more as an Italian varietal, where it lends this like nutty, almondy kind of characteristic to the wine.
So the wine that we're about to sample is a blend of different grape varietals.
Exactly.
And the first one that we just had was just one type of
100% Chenin Blanc. Yeah. Most wines that are out on the market are blends. So it's government regulated how you can label your wine. Just like we were talking about with French wines, a lot of times they're just labeled by their village in places like California. So the laws change, you know, as they get stricter, but it's at least 75% of the juice that's in the bottle has to be one specific varietal in order for you to label it that varietal. So you could label a wine Cabernet Sauvignon, but it could only be 80% Cabernet, and the other 20% could be made up of different varietals that they don't need to disclose of. So it's quite interesting. But I said the blends lend themselves to creating a really full, rich profile because you can utilize the other grape varietals to kind of fill in the gaps with what you're missing. It's all sustainably farmed. They are certified organic as well, practicing in this region. So it's 25-year-old vines. The Grenache Blanc is vinified separately from the rest of the varietals. The Grenache Blanc is what's going to retain the most aromatic components to it. So that's why they vinify that separately. So they do a little bit of maceration. So they'll let the juice sit with the skins and seeds for a period of time, which doesn't always happen with whites, but they wanted to really impact that aromatic profile. And then it's 90% of the wine is aged in stainless steel, and the other 10% is aged in used barrels.
So not very oaky at all.
Correct. Yeah. It's not oaky at all. Sorry, and it's fermented in 10% used barrels, and then it's aged in stainless steel.
Okay.
And so it's the same thing. A lot of people are like, what's the point? Like, why age it in stainless steel? What does that do for the wine? But you need the wine to come together, to relax, to become one cohesive unit. You know, it's made up of molecules, aromatic congeners, all of those things. So you need that to settle and all come together to create that proper experience when you're enjoying the wine.
Well, what would the other option be if they said don't use stainless steel?
Well, you could age in oak. You could age in cement vats. You could age
cement vats.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah. That's one of the oldest.
Cement vats.
Yeah. Or there's something called demijohns, which is common in Spain. So they're like these glass vases, large glass vases.
Wow.
They're usually used for oxidative wines, where they'll
like an orange wine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a ranchose. So they'll age the wine in the half buried in the ground. So
is
that
this kind of like an effort to like cool it off or save space?
because it's so hot, so they need to keep it cool, but they want it to they want that oxidative quality to happen. So oxidation is happens with sherry, happens with a lot of different fortified wines. That's where you get this like nuttiness.
So it's good.
Natural nuttiness from the wine. It is depending on your flavor the preference.
Because oxidation in bread.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Is this your glass? You're ready.
That's my glass. Kept it away from Bill. I'm taking the first sip.
So when I first tasted this wine, it was extremely, extremely cold. And then I let it sit out for about even just 15 minutes, and then I had tried it again, and it helped to bring the temperature down a little bit, which just completely changes the flavor profile.
It's so buttery.
There's no oak aging on there. It spends a little bit of time on the lees, but it's not an excessive amount of time. So you get this ripeness up front, this like orchard fruit. It's almost like ripe pear.
Right. I definitely got the fruitiness, the pear, sweet, buttery fruit.
And then, yeah, right on the mid palate and towards the finish, you get all of that minerality and that kind of like steely, flinty kind of finish. Nice. And it's so racy and acidic again. So really, really awesome to pair with a cheese.
Okay.
So
that has no fish in it. Even though it's,
but this would be a great pairing with fish.
That's
Cynthia,
right.
we have a question for you.
Cynthia, hi, it's Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you? Hi, Andrew.
Hey.
So, Cynthia, you know how I feel about your cheeses. I absolutely adore everything. Can I ask a question about this cheese? What makes it smell so pungent?
I have no idea.
Thank you. Okay, good night.
All I know is when I first bought the cheese last year, I was warned that I need to let it air out. And so when I brought in the cheese, I was very shocked because it smelled like fish. But then once I tasted it, I was a convert. I fell in love with this cheese right away.
It tastes absolutely stunning. It's so delicious, but it's
so delicious, but it stinks like no other. And it's just really strange. I don't know why it smells like fish. It smells like fried fish.
Even the exterior of it, I'm just wondering if they rub it in a salt or something, because
yeah, they do a light salt wash on the rind before they age it.
So good.
So you guys have tasted the cheese already?
We did. I'm sorry.
We finished it.
I'm actually outside. I'm outside. Can you let me in? I need to buy some.
Yeah, the kids that were manning the store that day when the cheese was airing out its smell was a little bit nervous that they had no idea where the smell was coming from. And I pointed to the 2 wheels of cheese sitting on the counter. A lot of fun. But so if you look at this piece of cheese, just admiring it, the way it looks, I find it really beautiful. It looks like a piece of marble. Like an opal almost. You see a variation of color. It's almost luminescent, if I may. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little strange. Maybe I've had too much wine, but I'm very captivated by how this cheese looks. It is a sheep's milk cheese. It is one of the world's oldest cheeses. It actually is about 3,000 years old and predates the English alphabet. It was made.
Wait, this cheese is 3,000 years old? We shouldn't be eating this.
Well, the wedge that you're eating is not 3,000.
Oh, all right.
But this type of cheese is 3,000 years old. It is a sheep's milk cheese. And sheep's milk is very interesting because some people might be a little sensitive to cow's milk. And if that's the case, sheep's milk is perfectly fine and actually better for you because its fat molecules are a lot smaller and so it's more digestible. So if anybody has trouble digesting cow's milk, sheep's milk should not be a problem. It is also a very rich cheese because it's sheep's milk. Sheep's milk has the highest fat content out of any mammalian milk that they use for cheese. It's made in the French Pyrenees region. I'm going to show you the map now. So the French Pyrenees region is very beautiful. It's very mountainous, very lush. It's just gorgeous.
Wow.
And they've been making this cheese for over 3,000 years old. It was a vital part of the economy back then. in the Pyrenees and the Northern Basque region, they had actually used this cheese as currency back in the day. And it was first recorded in the 1st century. They actually used it to pay taxes and bills.
So they would make it?
They would make it and use it as money.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a really, really old cheese.
Right as soon as you started cutting it, the
smell went away.
But it changed. It's so nutty.
It's a delicious cheese.
That's so cool. Like it just hit you.
I'm gonna take a bite.
Yeah. But I love that you're just releasing like a totally different flavor profile after you're slicing into it.
So if you're tasting the cheese now, it's very buttery. It's almost, well, it's very creamy and pasty. The texture is, I would say this is a medium textured cheese. It's kind of like Goldilocks, right? It's not too dry and hard, but it's not too soft. It's kind of in the middle. It's just like perfect. It's very flavorful when you eat it. Sometimes you can get like a hint of brassiness or hay, but for the most part, it's just very smooth, very buttery, very nutty without feeling like a Swiss cheese. It's just, I don't know, it's a really, really nice, it's one of my favorite cheeses. This is a cheese that when you feel the texture right now, it's still relatively young. So this is about 18 months or so. If you let the cheese age, it can get drier and harder and becomes grateable. And you will also start to get those little crunchy bits called calcium lactate that develop in the cheese. And it just takes on a different profile, but it's still really delicious. At this stage, it's perfect for melting. So also, there are only 60 producers of this cheese right now. It has AOC certification.
Oh.
I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the AOC. Can you say it? Appellate d'origine certification.
Appellation d'origine.
There you go. Can you say it again?
Appellation d'origine.
Like that. So basically, it's a certification that protects the production of the cheese in terms of the grower or the dairy farmer, the region, and in this case, also the type of sheep that they're getting their milk from. It has to come from 2 different types of sheep, either the red face or the black face Manek sheep or the Béarnais sheep.
Oh.
Very specific.
Well, that's what's so cool about these old world regions is they really take such pride in their food and their beverage.
Right.
And the fact that they create these government kind of methods of maintaining the integrity of what they're producing.
Right, because you can't just come in and copy this cheese anywhere, you know?
It has to come from that region.
It has to come from this region. It has to come from these specific breeds of sheep, but it does not have to be made by monks anymore.
All right, well, I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you guys like the cheese?
Yes.
We're muted.
So,
Cynthia, can you remind us the name of the cheese?
it's the Ossau Iraty.
It's working like goddamn.
Or you can call it the Ossau good cheese.
You're so clever.
Andrew's wine's getting to me a little bit.
Ossau
Iraty.
Iraty.
Mm-hmm. Ossau Iraty.
Interesting. I like it.
So.
All right. Shall we go to the third?
We should go to the third one.
Right.
But as we move to the third one, I also want to say that the Ossau Iraty cheese that we're tasting pairs really well with red wine as well. So, you know, when we get to the red wine, jump back to the cheese and give it a taste, see if you like it.
Yeah, absolutely. See that crossover,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll help you also taste different flavor profiles within the red wine itself. All right. I don't know why I can't. Can you jump to the map?
I can.
If she wasn't here, I could do it, but she's here, and so I just kind of have comfort in that.
I'll be a little assistant.
And then go down. Yeah, perfect. All right.
Beaujolais!
So we're going to Beaujolais. So Beaujolais is another region that I always love to highlight and talk about because it has such a bad rap.
Why?
Because of Beaujolais Nouveau. It almost.
I remember when I was in college, people talk about Beaujolais wine, and they're like, "Oh,
Well, it's got this
that's
little
the wine you like."
gimmicky thing, and yeah, it's celebrated in France, in the region. The third week in November is when the Beaujolais Nouveau is released.
Why that week? Is that a festival?
Well, yeah, because they do harvest. It goes through fermentation. It's not aged. It's really just released right after. And so that's when they release it. And so you're in the States, it's right around Thanksgiving. So that became like a big gimmicky kind of marketing ploy, which then we needed mass amounts of it in order to fill the demand. And of course, when we need mass amounts of something, the quality is going to go down and whatnot. So,
Andrew and Cynthia?
Yes?
So I just want to take a second to interrupt for our second game.
Okay.
Before you head into your last pairing. So if everybody wants to turn their cameras on, if they want to participate, this one is going to be courtesy of Louis Campbell. So he came up with this quirky one. This one's probably going to be a little bit more difficult than the first one that we said, but who can bring us, the first person to bring us a tennis racket?
we pulled this out from their coffee table.
My ex-husband.
I'm calling it.
My ex-husband.
Really?
He's fanatic.
And Cynthia and Andrew, if you can go to instead of screen sharing, just so I can see the first person. Oh!
Sean Conley again?
Lou doesn't win because he knew.
No, he doesn't count. He doesn't count.
Oh, and Jeff is showing a picture of a tennis racket.
You didn't,
Hey,
you didn't say it had to be a physical racket.
Oh, Todd, Sean, I don't know, Melissa, who had it?
Leo?
I saw, so I actually saw Leo Levin.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Leo, if you want to unmute yourself quickly.
Actually, Scott.
I can't believe how many people had tennis rackets. I thought this was going to be such a unique thing.
Scott. Leo's my son.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are the winner of a $50 gift certificate to the Pawling Bread Company. So
No, that's called cheating. That's called cheating. He doesn't get it. No, that's cheating. No, Leo. No.
There, but okay. So I will message you privately to get your information, and we'll get that out to you in the next day or two. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for participating tonight.
Thank you.
All right, Andrew and Cynthia, I'm going to kick it back to you.
All right.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, I should unmute now. Okay. I should mute again.
All right, so back to the region of Beaujolais. We were talking about Beaujolais Nouveau. So that kind of became known as this bottle of wine that is kind of lackluster. It's really sweet and fruity and really light. And that's what I've always found people's perception of Gamay was. So Gamay is the grape varietal that comes from this region. Right to the north of the area that's highlighted in purple is Burgundy. So Burgundy, which is a highly prized region, highly acclaimed wines. This is right south of that. So at one point, Beaujolais was actually a part of Burgundy, and then it was granted permission to split off and have its own ALC and recognized as its own region. So it's predominantly known for its Gamay Noir. The darker purple regions are all considered Cru Gamay regions. So Cru meaning you're going to get a higher end wine. The soil, the climate, the vines, the terroir.
So Cru is like a grade almost?
Exactly. So just like with the Champagne or with a French Bordeaux, you have, well, Bordeaux is first growth, second growth, but you have with Burgundy, Premier Cru, which is going to mean that it's coming from a very specific parcel of land, which is recognized as being able to produce finer grapes to then be able to produce finer wine. And so the region works a little different than a lot of others, and this mimics Burgundy, where you'll have this, this whole vineyard site And those vineyard sites are split up into parcels. So one producer doesn't own the entire vineyard site. They own this little plot of land because they're so highly acclaimed and so sought after. So that's kind of how that works. But so,
what is the average size of a plot?
Gosh, they're not large
They're
at
not
all.
large,
No, they're quite small.
but still able to produce enough wine for import.
Yeah, but that's why Burgundy is so expensive, because they can only produce so much. But Cru Beaujolais is still really not appreciated for what it is and for the structure and quality of what they can produce. So your price points are fantastic, especially when we're talking lately about the tariffs that have been put on a lot of European wines. Those tariffs have made a major impact on the price. I mean, I have distributors who have just completely stopped taking in specific European wines for that region because they just can't make any money on it anymore. So in order to really help sustain that industry, I think it's important to start to learn about regions that are lesser known, which I didn't say earlier, but that is a big part of why I highlighted the Mont-Louis region, terrain in Loire, as well as, you know, whites and reds coming from Provence, especially going into the summer, and this Cru Beaujolais. So the Cru is Morgon. When you're talking, if you were to list these 9 Cru vineyard or Cru sites in boldest to lightest, Morgon is going to be the second boldest. So it's has the ability to produce a really rich, full and structured, shouldn't say fuller for what it is. It's still about medium bodied, but really nice, beautiful structured wine. So Michel Gounier, the label of the wine is Gounier. Michel Gounier is the winemaker and the vintner. He is 4th generation winemaker. So you really get that culture and that family heritage and history there. And he's retained true to his roots and what he's learned from his, you know, other generations and his parents to produce something that he feels represents the grape and the region quite well. So the grapes are all hand selected, and they don't go through the process of de-stemming, which would mean actually like taking out the stems. So they're picked in whole clusters, and they're gravity fed, and they go through a process where it's a wooden press that just kind of lightly sits on top, and it's almost like the gravity just helps to crush the grapes. And what that does is, when you're working with other types of presses, depending on where you are, when you're pressing down those grapes, the harder you press, the more astringent flavors you're taking out. So when you're just really lightly pressing these wines, especially with Gamay, you start to release these really light, beautiful floral notes. Specifically, banana is a note that's very common with Gamay, only to come out when it goes through a process called carbonic maceration, which is strictly just the weight of the grapes up top, pressing the grapes in the bottom. So this is slightly different, where he's still using a press, but that wooden press is not, there's no pressure above it. It's just the gravity that's pressing down on the grapes.
I can kind of visualize how that would work, because if you're crushing it with force, you're bruising, and with bruising, you're damaging a lot of those delicate compounds that you were talking about.
Yeah.
What were those structures that you said? The flavor?
The aromatic congeners?
Yeah, the aromatic congeners. And then by gravity, I would assume that you're slowly stretching and letting the cells almost leak.
Yeah.
So you're not destroying as much of those aromatic congeners.
So it naturally occurs in any process of making wine right before it's pressed. And a lot of times it's called free run juice, and they'll take that off and not use it, or they'll throw it back into the vat to ferment with the rest of the wine. Because they want bigger, more structured wine. It depends on the culture, where it's coming from. But so.
It smells like grape juice.
Yeah? I can't get past that cheese still. So.
Do you want me to take it away?
No.
I'll put it in front of Bill.
So what happens here is, in order to help influence the structure of the wine, it goes through it's 14 to 15 days maceration. So after the grapes are pressed, the juice is then sitting with the skins and the seeds for about 14 to 15 days. So you're getting this darker color. Almost looks the way like a burgundy would look. And I think we talked about this the last time, but you see, you always tell the age of a wine when you hold it on its side and put it against a white background. The difference between the center and the rim, the greater the variation, the older the wine is going to be. So you can see that this is still nice and young. And also a lot of older wines have this like rusty flavor or color on the outside of the rim.
I'll be able to see more, Bill didn't drink one.
Do you want a little more? Should I refill?
Just a little bit. There's none of that halo, right?
Right, yeah, because it's too.
Shall we show them how you were doing it? Did you guys see what Andrew was doing?
Can you see that if you take it and you hold it against, yeah, that's perfect. And you can see from the center to the edge, there's not a lot of variation, but you can see a little bit there, which would tell you it's not, it probably has 2 years on it. So I believe this is 2018 or 2019 is what we're drinking, which is exactly that. So you'll get a greater variation in color from the center to the edge when you're working with an older wine. So in just smelling the wine right away is where you're gonna get those lighter red fruits.
It is very light, yeah.
But you get a little bit of that brambly.
Yes,
if you go in for a second time, yeah, you'll get a little bit more of that like brambly kind of like herbal component, which will come through.
This is so drinkable, it's almost dangerous.
Yeah, but then you get that, it has structure. It doesn't sit heavily on your mouth. It's fresh, but it's not something that just kind of washes away. I mean, it's an experience for sure.
Delicious.
And
I'm trying to do what you just did to taste it, but I'm worried I have to wear a bib.
And you still get the acidity.
Yeah.
Which a lot of times is replaced with tannin.
Very, very drinkable. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of tannins. This is delicious.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the salami. And
Okay,
then we
the
can get into how it pairs.
salami. So if you guys cut into your salami already, there is a white rind that's coating it. You want to remove the rind. The white rind is actually mold, but do not be afraid. It's good mold. It's actually derived from penicillin, and it actually prevents the bad mold from encroaching onto the salami. So it's actually a protective layer, because the casing that the charcuterie maker uses is a natural casing. This product is 100% natural. Even her pork comes from Vermont. So this charcuterie, this salami is made in Vermont by Babette's Table. She started making salami a few years ago. She moved her whole family to France to study the old world butchering and salami making of, like, you know, back in the day. So she wanted to pick up the traditional ways of making salami. So she actually moved her whole family to France, Gascony, France, for 2 years to pick up salami making, came back, started a business. And for me, I love her salami because even the pigs are, you know, right from the farm. So you know that it's good quality pork. It's organic pork. It comes from the Von Trapp farmstead.
Okay.
It's the same Von Trapp family from The Sound of Music. So quality control is very high. It's delicious. And yeah.
It kind of reminds me of your story and how you went and studied an old art form.
An old art form.
To help kind of resurrect and bring it back, which is really cool.
So as you let the flavors linger on your palate, notice how creamy that tastes. It's not overly salty.
No, there's this really unique flavor, almost like buttered popcorn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's from the fermentation, because believe it or not, salami also undergoes fermentation. It sits in a 100% humidity room, 75 degrees, which sounds kind of scary because you're curing meat at those temperatures. But what happens is they're bringing the pH levels down to a point where bad bacteria cannot breed. And so they also inoculate the casing with the good mold to keep the bad mold out. And over time, you know, if you don't finish this log of salami, you can always wrap it back in the paper and put it in an open Ziploc bag and keep it in the crisper drawer of your fridge. And maybe you might see like some gray mold growing on it, and that's okay as well, because this salami is, you know, it's a natural product, so you're gonna have some natural changes occurring to it once it's aging. But
Wow, that's really interesting.
yeah, you want more?
What happens if you don't peel all, like I was like, am I peeling it all off correctly? Did I not peel it all off?
It's not harmful. I mean, you can eat it. It's just a little chewy and it's a little powdery. So I just prefer to peel it off, but you don't by any means need to peel any of that off.
Cynthia?
Yes.
So we have a few people asking if the salami, cheese, and oranges are available for purchase at the Pawling Bread Company.
Yes, they are. Definitely. And the salami, the one that we've chosen today, has the whole black peppercorn in it. There's also the plain ones if this happens to be a little spicy for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I love how that, like, you know, Pinot Noirs and I say Pinot Noir because Gamay Noir is very similar in its structure and flavor profile, but coming from this region can have this kind of gamey undertone in a really good way. I know it comes off to some people as a fault, but so that's where I thought it would be really fun to play off of that, because you can have this wine that has a gamey undertone but bright fruit and a little bit of that kind of spice and herbal component.
Yeah, did you take a sip of wine?
I did, yeah, and that's where like
really like flavor just goes like that. Oh.
Yeah, and it really creates, like when you drink the wine, you get more, it tastes more structured and it has more depth to it.
Yeah, tastes more minerally too after the salami.
Yeah, and then because it still has that acidity to it, it helps cut through the fattiness and cleanse your palate right after.
I'm gonna try it with the fishy cheese now, but Billy, oh my cheese.
I'll just sit here and eat this. Yeah.
Did you guys get a chance to try the red wine with the cheese?
Yes, we love
Very
it.
nice. Yeah.
Totally
Tristan.
So yeah, usually when I'm doing pairings, I like to contrast and show kind of highlight differences. But you always need acid to help cut through fat.
Yeah.
You need a little sweetness to balance acidity.
We're going full circle now. I'm gonna
Try it with the.
just to like cleanse the palate a little bit.
Andrew, so we have a question about where the wines can be purchased locally.
I'm gonna answer some messages now.
So, that's a good question. I mean, I do know that Wineology works with all of the distributors that these wines would come from. So even if they don't have it in stock, it's definitely an option that they could purchase it from. I, of course, want to keep it local. I live in Danbury. There's a wine store by my house right near Trader Joe's that had the sparkling Chenin. They had the Morgon as well. The Sulotse, because it's such small production, is only sold in New York State in the US. But yeah, I'm sure they, any of them would be happy to look into it and get it for you. Answer these questions. You can see that, so.
Okay. There goes. Wow, whose head is that chiming in over there?
Yeah. Are there more? You want to read the questions out loud?
My son
Okay,
is screaming.
Kelly wants to know the name of the cheese. The name of the cheese is, well, it's spelled, if you were to read it the way it's spelled, it's you would say Ossau Iraty, but it's actually Ossau Iraty. It's not Ossau Iraty. That was a spelling mistake. No one's irate. It's Iraty. I'm gonna correct the spelling here. I've also been drinking, so.
Is there any, so also in Spanish means bear.
Bear? Like the animal bear?
Yeah.
Really?
But it's not, how is it O-S-S-A-U? Is that how it's, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
but they say it's pronounced Osso, not Ossau. So the bear is Osso or Ossau?
also.
Osso. I'm definitely for the bears.
Oh.
Yeah.
There could be some connection.
Trains passing through.
What other questions do we have?
About the wine, right? There was one about the wine. Where can we buy the wines?
Oh, yep, that we talked about. Anybody else have questions that they didn't send in?
Yeah, if there's not, you could raise your hand or just participate. If not, I just want to call out a few people and just sort of chit chat as we end this night. Is that Leo? Is Leo on the screen right now? You got to unmute. You have to unmute. Hey, there's the real Leo.
This computer.
Wow.
Hi, Leo.
That's what we do as parents. We buy our kids computers and then we have to use them.
Wait, but Leo, your father owes you a gift certificate.
To pay for them.
Did
Father owes you a gift
Did
certificate.
Leo get the gift certificate?
No, that's all for me. It was his tennis racket, though, I think.
It's his tennis racket. You know, somebody accused you guys of using a pickleball racket, but if it was a children's racket, that's what we were also using, was a children's racket. So, but it is in fact a tennis racket.
That's a tennis racket. Yeah.
All right, who else do we have on here? Luke Lyons. How are you, sir? You're also muted.
We could use some more wine.
More? Are you done already?
Oh yeah.
Did you drink all three? I don't see anyone else in your screen. Did you drink all three bottles by yourself? We got Joe Grandy. You look like you're on like Apple TV. You're just all stretched out. Are you outside right now?
I wish I were out. We were outside earlier, but it got a little chilly for outside. Just right here at the table. We have a guest visitor with us, Kat Slattery.
Oh, hey, Kat. How are you?
Hi. Cheers, everyone.
Oh, and there's Kelly and Melissa. You're muted.
Hi.
There's a bunch of
Hello.
Hey guys.
Bonnie.
Hi, Steve. I see Kelly and Laura.
Hi, guys.
And oh, Kim. Kim, unmute yourself. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Ann.
Me?
Yes.
How are you? How are you? This was awesome.
We're so
thanks.
glad you joined us, Kim. It's been so fun, and we haven't seen you in so long.
Oh, we've only gotten through one bottle, unfortunately, but that was plenty.
Which bottle?
The white. It was awesome.
So delicious. Cool.
And Shapiro's over there. Unmute yourselves, the Shapiro's. I'll give a plug. They are owners and family owners of the White Silo Winery in Sherman, which does a whole bunch of events like this. Really fun.
For the Pawling Bread Company. Oh my gosh. I'm McKinney and Doyle all the time, but I'm very excited because now I have to make a trip to go get cheese and salami.
Yeah, also, maybe you guys could hook up. Maybe we'll do an event at White Silo with Pawling Bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Something fun.
Great. This was amazing. This was so much fun and delicious. Everything.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up. Maria and Justin, hello. Bakers, hello. Reisners.
It's just funny how because sort of right up until COVID, we sort of like the indoor clothes, but we don't.
I have the speaker off.
Okay. All right, we're wrapping it up. I think Kelly is in the Museum of Modern Art, so
I
we'll
am.
let her go before she gets arrested.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
It was a really great night. We
Really
had so much
appreciate it.
fun.
Thank you.
We
Thank
love
you for joining.
So grateful to you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Awesome night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye.